Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining the United Nations Association of the United States of America for our Global Engagement Online series, a semi-monthly program that connects members of the public to industry leaders to discuss our planet's most pressing issues. I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Ahmed Masalhi, and I'm the Global Goals Ambassador of UNA USA for SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. And this is my co-ambassador, Caroline.
Hello, my name is Caroline Rakos-Wojciechowski. I too am a UNA USA Ambassador of SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. I am also part of the Brooklyn chapter for UNA USA and a UN Experiential Fellow.
Thank you, Caroline. And now I would like to briefly introduce our speakers who will lead the discussion about happiness and well-being from different perspectives. The correlation between happiness and our health conditions, how the urban design of sustainable cities and communities can achieve well-being, and of course, the significant role of transportation in this issue. Dr. Marie-Christine Nizzi, an innovative leader and scientist in medical humanities. Robert Fleming, an award-winning educator, author, and architect. Zenobia Fields, a transportation expert and director of government and community relations. And Kim Flores, an expert in social and emotional well-being, CEO, author, speaker, and director of happiness at Johnson Second. Today, we will focus on happiness and well-being in cities and communities in honor of the International Day of Happiness. In 2012, the General Assembly of the United Nations passed a resolution proclaiming March 20th as the International Day of Happiness, recognizing the relevance of happiness and well-being as universal goals and aspirations in the lives of human beings around the world, and the importance of it and the recognition in the public policy. It also recognized the need for more inclusive, equitable, and balanced approach to economic growth to promote sustainable development, poverty eradication, happiness, and well-being for all the people on the planet. That led to defining a new world paradigm through the report of the high-level meeting on well-being and happiness. The 2017 UN report emphasizes the social foundations of happiness. This represents a significant shift away from what has called before the GDP to a sole measure of quality of life. The World Happiness Report of 2021 focuses on the effect of COVID-19 and how it affected people's lives and fared and lost their well-being. We are celebrating the International Day of Happiness as a way to recognize the importance of happiness in our lives and the lives of the people. In 2015, the UN launched the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs, which seek to end poverty, reduce inequality, and protect our planet. Three key aspects that led to well-being and happiness. And now here we go to our speakers. I would like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Marie-Christine Nizzi. She's a visionary leader, holds a rare interdisciplinary expertise in medical humanities with a PhD in philosophy from Sorbonne University and a PhD in clinical psychology from Harvard University. Marie-Christine is a scientific director at Harvard Alumni Mental Health, where she directs a global research program to develop, disseminate, and evaluate interventions, improving the well-being of alumni worldwide. An award-winning scientist, educator, her specialty course ranked at the best at Harvard, and she was named the 2018 Horizon Harvard Scholar for her work with the US veterans and face transplant recipients. Marie-Christine, we're gonna be more happy to hear from you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Ahmed, for this wonderful introduction. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor for me to join my wonderful colleagues in this panel today. I want to start by acknowledging that talking about happiness in today's context of global loss and systemic oppression against minorities may seem out of place. Many of us are navigating grief and hope. Like the lighthouse in the storm, may this event be a beacon of hope to those of us who grieve. To get us all started, I would like to ask everybody 3 questions. A poll should appear on your screen, and you'll be able to answer with your gut feeling each of the 3 questions. There are no right or wrong answers, so go ahead and click away, and we'll keep that poll on the screen for a few more seconds. Thank you, everybody. I see clicking away. And we are going to leave the poll for 5 more seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. And now we're going to share the results with you. So you can see that most of you answered that in Money and Happiness, money cannot buy happiness, that happiness had more to do with contentment than excitement, and then you feel happier when you think of the thing you want than you get the thing you want. Keep your answers in mind. We're going to go on a journey together. And I don't know if I need to remove that poll. It should no longer be on everybody's screen. Great. Imagine you just won the lottery. You're now a billionaire. You can do whatever you want. You can quit your job, never have to worry about healthcare ever again, travel the world. And then what? Will you be happily ever after? Happiness is a powerful drive, but an elusive goal. In my time today, I would like to dispel a few myths about nuggets and seeds. See, the myth that lottery companies sell us is that the more money we have, the happier we get. And the entire world of advertising is supporting this narrative. Now, don't get me wrong, money is a strong contributor to life satisfaction up to a certain point. Money can buy us food, put a roof over our head, give us access to health and safety. But once those essential needs are met, more money, as you see, doesn't always mean more happiness. In fact, our intuitions about that are completely wrong because we tend to overestimate how long the excitement of winning will make us happy. 1 year after winning, most lottery winners report that their happiness level is back to what it was before. In economy, this disconnect between happiness and wealth is called the Easterlin paradox. Beyond the threshold of essential needs, countries continue to accumulate wealth here in blue, but their happiness of their population reaches a plateau. So if you were to win the lottery and to buy a car, data predicts that 1 year later, your happiness level would be the same whether you bought this car or that one. But our intuitions shout otherwise. We all tend to believe that once we get the thing we want, we'll be happier. Most of us, however, have not won the lottery. So let's think about a situation that most of us have experienced. Have you ever anticipated receiving something you really, really wanted? The toy of the year when you were a kid, a big promotion at work, your dream house. You daydreamed of it, imagining again and again the moment when it would finally be yours. Just thinking about it made you happy for months, sometimes years. And then the dream came true. You got the thing you wanted. And the dreaming stopped. Like dreaming, happiness is intangible. It's not a thing, but we associate happiness with certain things, and we begin to want these things as a proxy for happiness. This is particularly true in cities, where many desirable things are on display all around us, while the stories behind each of these tokens often remains anonymous. We imagine the blissful life of other people, and we feel less happy by comparison. In youth, this comparison to touched up pictures of happiness on social media is particularly damaging to self-esteem and mental health. So how come our instinct is so wrong about what will truly make us happy? That is, except for most of the people in this room who answered correctly. Well, our brain gets hijacked by immediate reward. Would you rather receive a gold nugget or a seed? Before you even get to think about what the seed could turn into over time, there's a part of your brain that's already shouting that you want the nugget. Like winning the lottery, nuggets represent an immediate reward, and our brain loves those. We think it will make us happy because our brain gets very excited about it. But confusing happiness with excitement has a cost. In the body, the high excitement we feel when we anticipate a reward triggers the same system as stress. Somehow, we have learned to enjoy the intensity of being stressed. And bad things happen to us when we stay in that hyperdrive for too long. Accelerated aging, emotional exhaustion, mental illness. Sustainable contentment, on the other hand, does not feel like excitement. In fact, it activates the opposite system. Your body relaxes, at peace, and satisfied. This is the happy state that our body can maintain over time. And when we feel good, our self-esteem increases, our productivity increases, and our resilience through tough time improves. So what does sustainable happiness look like? Today, I want to suggest to you that the quest for happiness starts with a shift in mindset. Rather than looking for quick nuggets, we would do better to cultivate seeds and to seek long-term contentment rather than the high of immediate reward. When we slow down and declutter our space from the things that get us excited, we start to notice small variations within us. When we stop thinking that happiness comes from things on the outside, we discover that each of us already has the perfect compass to happiness. We can't buy that, but we can train it. The science of happiness tells us how. So here are 3 skills you can cultivate to grow your happiness. First, train your attention away from comparisons that lead you astray. Cities offer sharp disparities. My colleagues at the French Observatory of Wellbeing has shown how easy it is to become depressed by looking at what others have that we lack. In so doing, we forget the lesson from the lottery winners. Once our essential needs are covered, no stimulus check can replace the happiness that comes from seeing our loved ones. So rather than focusing on wanting new things, see if you can cultivate the relationships that bring you joy and meaning. Second, train your attention towards gratitude. Science has found that writing 3 things that you're grateful for every single day, no matter how small, can deeply transform your life satisfaction. Try making it a daily ritual. When you go to bed, ask yourself, no matter what else happened, what are 3 things I'm grateful for today? And third, practice mindfulness. Try to notice subtle changes around you to ground yourself in the present. For instance, try to notice one new thing each day along your commute or when you grab the mail. Cities change rapidly around us, offering many opportunities to tune in and notice. Changing behaviors is like planting a seed. It takes time, and the rewards come with patience and continued growth. We all know the value of compound interests over many decades to build retirement savings. Building happiness is no different. It is in the small shifts in perspective, in the intangible moments of connection, in the attention to subtle changes along the way, that transformation and lasting happiness happen. And since practice makes perfect, I want to give you all an opportunity to take your next step towards life habits that will help you grow your happiness right now. Please follow me on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. Type in menti.com, MENTI.com, and you will be able to see the responses of everybody in real time. As we enter now this screen, you will see that you need to enter a code once you are on the website, menti.com. The code is 49387986. So again, on menti.com, and the code is 49387986. And for our first question, I will ask you to notice one new thing around you. You can look around, especially if you've been in that same room for a long time in the pandemic. Try to find something that you have not paid attention to in a long time. It can be something you hear, something you see, something you smell or you touch. And then you can enter up to 3 responses, but try to at least find one new thing. And now everybody should see the responses in real time of those new things you're discovering around you. Blooming tree, some dust, a candle, a curtain, the grass in the yard, flowers, a reflection off of the mirror, fresh air system, folded laundry, coffee. See how our attention can be directed to all these things in our life that we don't often pay attention to. And we're gonna now move to the second question. We'll do the same exercise. A lot of you noticing dust, I see. And for the second exercise, I'm gonna ask you to list one thing that you're grateful for today. And same, you can notice up to 3, but try to notice at least one thing that you feel grateful for today. Family, pets, spring, the vaccine, sunshine, health, the family, those connections, my home, watching from my balcony. You see health, family, coffee, sunshine are starting to pop up. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. And I encourage you, as I now go back to my slides, thank you all for participating. I encourage you to continue to practice those habits in your life, to continue growing and improving your well-being. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Marie-Christine. That was awesome and wonderful presentation. It was very interactive and inspiring. Your pictures really touched my heart. And I'm happy that I answered correctly your first questions. And by the way, I was the candle guy. And I guess your advices are really great, and it will make a shift, like a very big shift in my life, especially for spending more than like a week in this pandemic, not going outside. Thank you all for interacting with us. And I'm sure that you have a lot of questions, but we're going to delay the questions after all 4 speakers are done, so you can have the opportunity to listen from more than one perspective from different speakers. And now our next speaker, Professor Rob Fleming. He's an award-winning educator, author, lead accredited professional architect. He's the co-creator and director of the Master of Science Sustainable Design program at Thomas Jefferson University. His program is one of the oldest, largest, and most innovative sustainable design programs in the world. In 2020, Rob co-authored his 3rd and 4th books, Sustainable Design Basics and Sustainable Design for the Built Environment. Rob is a sustainability fellow at Refuge Architecture in Philadelphia, where he consults and facilitates integrated design threads. In all his work, Rob strives to advocate for social equity in the built environment, regenerate the natural environment, and make beautiful spaces. Also, he brings economic viability to sustainability projects. Rob, we're going to be more happy to hear from you. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much there, Ahmed. And if you could start with the polls right away, that would be great if we could bring those up.
Now you can see.
Okay, I feel happy in my current workspace. Please answer that question. And then we have, I feel happier when I'm out in nature. Answer that question, yes or no. I wish my current workspace was more natural. And then if you scroll down, the most important question is, I like it when a spider crawls up on my arm. Love for you to answer that one very, very honestly, please. And you'll notice that we're barely, well, actually we're over 10%, which is pretty amazing. And we can keep the poll open for another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen at this point, if that's okay. And we'll get started. And do you all see my screen right now? Is it clear? Great. All right, well, I'm so happy to be here. I'm going to try to answer a question a little different than Marie's. My question is, can design bring happiness? Not so sure, but I'm so grateful to be here today, and we'll dig into this challenging question. Let's start with the big picture. What a transformative point in history. This is the equivalent of the Declaration of Independence for the US, and I'm sure for other documents in other countries. Please, if you have not looked at these, look at them more closely, and especially for me being an architect, I'm looking at goal number 11, sustainable cities and communities. Now, how are you feeling right now? When you see this picture, do you start to feel good? Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel more hopeful? You feel the sun, you see the brown colors of the earth, the trees, and you know just on the horizon, some deer are going to cross the page and you're going to kill them and eat them. And that's what makes you happy, is that in this landscape here, you see food. This is referred to as the Savannah Principle. It's coined by Satoshi Kanazawa in 2004, a principle that human behavior remaining to some extent adapted to ancestral environment of our early Homo in the Savannah may lead to problems in modern day. And this is how we're going to start to answer the question that we're going to talk about. And Marie, this goes even deeper into what you talked about. What's actually happening in your brain during happiness? What chemicals are being released? These are legal drugs that you can buy for $0. And I think Marie's presentation really showed that. Oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, endorphins. And oxytocin is also the drug that is released when you're collaborating, when you're playing in a rock band, when you're playing sports, when you're doing a design charrette together, right, Ahmed? So I think of these as EDSO, and EDSO is just a wonderful pathway to happiness. Maybe we can activate them. Maybe we can allow that to happen. But we also have another sort of villain here, which is cortisol, which is stress, which is unhappiness. And Marie mentioned about how we have shorter lifespans when we have too much stress in our lives, when we don't have those other drugs being released into our body. So today I'm going to talk about how to accentuate the one group and to bring down the cortisol in the other group of examples. Now, I wonder if you look at this picture, do you think this picture is cortisol or do you think this is serotonin? And you could just think about that. You don't have to actually answer that question because it's cortisol. Zero natural light, fluorescent light beaming down on folks, no sense of privacy, no views to nature, no plants, no color. And also everybody looks unbelievably the same. And we don't talk, I think we'll talk a little bit more about diversity and why diversity is also part of that. But there again, another sort of cortisol environment that's hurting us. It's making us unhappy. Look at those lights hanging over there. These poor gentlemen suffering, looking at those drawings. And then there's the classic office worker. This is a death sentence for us. This is probably going to take 2 to 3 years off of our life. Here we go. Here's some more of that. At least they made some blue panels, right? I'm looking at Caroline right now. She looks mortified by these interiors. But this is what I was trained in as an architect. I was trained to design these. And so 30 years ago, 20 years ago, I don't remember, I just quit my job. And I said, I cannot be a part of creating these spaces. I have to be a part of creating happiness for people. And I know that this is not the answer. I knew it before I knew what cortisol was. I knew I was doing the wrong thing. And I actually designed spaces like this, actually as bad or worse than this. Good news is times are changing and we are getting smarter. And more importantly, we are getting more empathetic. And this empathy is another form of intelligence that I think is going to drive and is driving a transformation in our built environment. And I love this diagram because the woman here is standing on the basis of the United Nations. And the United Nations and the Sustainable Development Principles are beautiful because they marry self-interest with empathy for a holistic model of how we can move forward as a society. We are never going to cease to be self-interested. And yet we've got to start to look on that right side over there, the overall quality of life, altruism, the second invisible hand is what I call it, and long-term thinking. These are ways that are going to transform us and bring us happiness, hopefully not just to those who are wealthy, but to all people. So one of the things that you're going to learn about today in my speech is something called biophilic design. Let me start off by saying I am no expert in biophilic design, but it's never stopped me from talking about it because I find it to be amazing. And what biophilic design does is it actually stimulates the release of those happiness chemicals in your brain and makes you feel really good. So when you look at this picture, you probably would like to have that as a lobby for your building, right? Maria's nodding, of course, right? This is what we're striving for. We feel good. Why? Because when we see plants that are thriving, we know the sun is out, we know there's water, we probably know there are animals, and we probably know it's going to bloom in the spring. And it makes us happy to know that we are one with our environment. This is at a competing university called Drexel, but this is a living wall, 5 stories tall. And as people go up the steps, they experience that living wall over and over again. Now, let's be honest here. Living walls are really dying walls. They are most of the time in a state of dying. And it's our intervention and our maintenance that keeps that thing alive, because we know that it generates the happiness. Imagine getting ready for a final exam and you get to take that stairway right before the exam. It's taking your cortisol away and it's bringing your serotonin and your endorphins in. And then this is the most unbelievable place in the world, Singapore. I have not been there. This is now my goal. This is a city built on biophilia as its guiding principle for design. And when you see that water, you know there's fish in that water. You know there's food in that landscape. You feel great. So it's not just that you're seeing green stuff, it's that that green stuff symbolizes and triggers a release in your body of something good. This is the first biophilic building in Singapore. It's a hospital. I forget the name. I apologize. And what they realized was the more nature that they put into the hospital, the quicker people recovered from illness. There's a waiting list to get into this hospital. And boy, does it take a lot of work to maintain this. And boy, is it worth it. This is the paradigm change that we're seeing in design right now. Now, this is a little bit of a different example. Imagine if Central Park came up for sale. What would it be worth? Probably $1 billion, probably a couple $1 billion, if not more. The value of those apartments around Central Park are there because of the views to those trees. We know intuitively that those trees make us happy. And so living on the edge is costing millions of dollars. And then, you know, this tower here, well, I'm going to hold judgment on the tower. I also want to acknowledge that Central Park was built by taking land from folks that lived in New York City that should not have happened. So I don't want to celebrate Central Park as a great triumph in design, but it certainly has changed New York City for sure. And we know we love water. Why do we love water? Why do we love the sound of water? When water is moving, it's being cleaned. And we gravitate towards clean water. We don't like the swampy water, the smelly water. We love water that's moving. And whenever we see a flower blooming, we know that there are birds and there are bees somewhere in the environment, because flowers don't bloom unless you're in a healthy ecosystem. And of course, flowers make us happy. I mean, how could you not? This is actually not Photoshop. This is an actual photo that I stole from the internet and did not put my source on. So I apologize for that. But here's the thing about biophilic design. You don't have to actually do nature to create the effects of nature inside us. So these are using the images of nature to create an interiors out of materials that are more human-made. This is a little blurry and I apologize. That circle is not real. That is a projection onto the ceiling of a sky. And apparently simulated nature will also help us to gravitate towards spaces and to be happy. So these are sort of the subtle kind of aspects. And then of course we have Frank Lloyd Wright's Johnson Wax building. If you notice, you cannot see where the wall and the ceiling meet. It is a beautiful artificial lit sky. And then what are you doing? You're working under giant mushrooms. So you're either on drugs or you're in a beautiful natural space that you can feel great in. Now, this is one that we talk about a lot, is prospect and refuge. We feel great when we feel safe and secure, but we also feel great when we can see out. Why do we want to see out? We want to see predators coming. And we also want to get those deer that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation. We like the idea that we can sit up in high ground and hunt. We feel great. When you go to a restaurant, the first person that takes a seat at the table always takes the seat with their back to the wall. Have you ever noticed that? That's because they're seeking the refuge. That means nobody can sneak up on them from behind, right? These are very subtle indicators for design. And Frank Lloyd Wright understood this very well. In Falling Water, he gave us the ultimate refuge with this fireplace, with the boulders, but he also gave us these balconies where you can begin to look out and see what's happening in the world. Now, we have really abstracted our connection to the savannah. But these 4 people that are going out golfing, first of all, they're holding hands, which is really weird. I've never held hands with anybody I've golfed with. But a lot of the things that we do in sports and a lot of things we do, like collecting mushrooms, really do harken back to the happiness of us in the savannah, hunting and gathering and being those human beings. Remember, we evolved for 100,000 years as hunter-gatherers. We've only been farmers for 12,000, and we've only been industrialists for 50 years. So we are much, much more attuned to the folks on the left than we are to the folks on the right who are trying to grab a little bit of that original glory that they might have had. Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe Rob is just telling stories here. Well, here's the proof. The research is out there. Carnegie Mellon has done years of research to prove that by using biophilic design, by having access to views, light, fresh air, people are going to be healthier. And by the way, businesses will make more money. Sorry to bring in money there, Maria. I had to do it there, just had to do it. Well, if only it were just that simple, right? Here's a little bit of the problem. This is the thing. Now, raise your hand or smile if this is like, Maria, you just answered my question. You are all in love right now. Why do you love these kittens? Why do you love them? They're gross. They have litter and eat food and they're all over the house. But listen, we have evolved over centuries to know that cats actually provide value for us in terms of our own health and happiness. It's not just that they're furry and fluffy, and I'm going to prove it to you by showing you that picture. Now, immediately, Caroline was stressed out and cortisol was immediately released into her body, right? And she wants me to put this picture up. She's like, please put this picture up, right? So these cats actually have evolved and we've used them to hunt these. And the reason that we don't like these, they're just as furry and they're just as friendly, is they carry disease. And we have evolved over centuries and centuries to know that these rats are trouble. So we like these folks. We don't like these folks, right? So we got to really start to dig into what it is that drives us and makes us happy. And that's why the last question is, as much as we say that we love nature, and as much as you say we're going to be in one with nature, right? And we're going to be in love with nature, we also have biophobia, and we have evolved over thousands of years, hundreds of thousands of years to know when to be scared. And it's okay to be scared in nature. It's okay. I don't want that to happen, but bad things can happen. It's definitely a possibility. And with that, I will say thank you. And I very much enjoy, bring back the kittens. Okay. Kittens are back. There we go. Let's end on this note. Marie looks really much happier right now. So we'll end on that note. And I want to thank you all for letting me chat with you about happiness in the built environment.
Well, thank you so much, Rob, for letting us end on that beautiful, happy note. And I feel called out because as a Manhattanite, I see those rats everywhere. And I'm so fortunate that I get to live with a cat, my roommate's cat. But thank you so much. And I think your point even about Singapore incorporating nature into its biophilic design. I went to Singapore to visit my friend, and that's when my sustainability journey actually started because I was so inspired by the Changi Jewel. So I hear you 100%. So we'll definitely catch up about that later. But right now, we are going to move on to our third speaker, and that will be Ms. Zenobia Fields, our transportation expert and director of government and community relations at New Jersey New Jersey Department of Transportation, I should say. Currently, Zenobia Fields serves as the Senior Policy and Program Advisor at New Jersey Department of Transportation. Zenobia plans, organizes, and coordinates the department's involvement in policy forums, local, state, and national. This includes coordinating reviews of state and federal legislation, capital investment strategies, capital program line items, and national transportation officials' policy statements to inform upcoming legislative changes and transportation projects and other transportation improvements. Zenobia has over 20 years of diverse experience, including optimizing business processes, capacity building, asset planning, performance planning, urban design, transportation-related design, data sharing, policy analysis, and general community development. Basically, she's Superwoman. She has held positions with nonprofits, government agencies, and private sector companies, including project work at the local, regional, and state and federal levels. Zenobia is skilled at balancing detail-oriented technical competencies with strategic relationship building for mutually beneficial joint initiatives. Prior to joining the NJDOT, She spent almost 12 years with the North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority. She started as a principal planner and was entrusted with increasing responsibilities, ultimately serving as the Department Director of Planning for more than 6 years. In this role, she was responsible for regional planning programs in mobility, transportation, environmental and sustainability initiatives, systems planning, modeling and data, freight planning, as well as interagency planning collaboration. She holds a bachelor's degree in architecture from the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute and a master's degree in urban planning from Virginia Tech. Zenobia, take it away.
Thank you, Caroline. And I would like to say my presentation will not be as long as that bio, but I definitely enjoyed hearing the previous presenters and talking about what makes you happy. And it really makes me think about my perspective. And I would invite you all to think about your perspective too. When you're thinking about how you're getting around, how is your happiness influenced? And it changes over time. Whether we're thinking about when we're younger in school, when I was in school, my mother let me walk to school. So my happiness was when I got to stop at the park or the playground or at the corner store. In high school, she drove me to school. I think about college where we were talking about Singapore. One of my experiences and probably what got me really interested in transportation is when I did a semester abroad in Japan. When I got there, instead of being driven to school or being able to walk to school, I had my host family where they told me, okay, this is your bike. You're going to ride your bike to the train station. And then at the train station, there was a parking deck for bicycles. It wasn't just a surface lot or a couple of racks. We were talking about 4 stories with ramps for a parking deck. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. Then I had to go from there, the train, to a commuter bus and the bus to the university. Now, that was about an hour and a half, but it was so enjoyable to me because I was able to do some of the things that Maria said, take in nature. When I was riding my bike, I was riding past rice fields. I was able to see Mount Fuji in the background when it was a nice day. Now, it's a little bit different now when I got to work. When I got to work, now I'm in a situation where I work 26 miles away from my office. So in order to make some of my meetings, I drive alone. So that can be anywhere from 40 to 50 miles driving alone in a car. When I worked in other places where I was in an urban center, I was able to take public transportation. Now on public transportation, the benefit of that is I could read a book. I could prepare for the day, prepare for a presentation like this. But at other times, I wasn't able to do that when I'm driving alone or not taking a shuttle. I had another coworker that instead of taking public transportation from the Bronx over to New Jersey, he actually preferred when he had a chance to ride his bike across the George Washington Bridge so he could go out and do errands on the weekdays. The few times I drive across the George Washington Bridge, I think to myself as I'm gripping my steering wheel, how is this happiness on 2 wheels going across this? But to each his own, and I ask you all to think about that. So think about what are our influences of happiness. Rob mentioned some of the things when we're looking about design, whether you're talking about the physical infrastructure, the built environment. For me, what I often think about is the road design and how people experience is thinking about the various land uses that we have, whether we're in, as we live, work, play, we shop, get around. What do you have access to? What's given priority? What are those transportation options? Do you have the option of using public transportation? Then now I think a lot of what we're thinking about with our non-renewable resources, we're thinking about some of these emerging technologies. We have the electrification of vehicles. We have self-driving cars. Then on the other side of that, we have our personal influences. We think about where we live right now may have a lot to do with not only our personal choices, but it has to do with our family. If you have school-age children, if you're a caretaker for an elderly adult, our jobs or career goals, we don't have a choice necessarily where that is located, but we have a choice in where we live and how we choose self-care, what's going to feed our quality of life. Over time, we're going to see some technologies that's going to impact where we live. So one of the images that we have up right now is showing where the street or corridor right here, you have your marketplaces. You don't have the combustion engine yet. You're using your horses get around to mostly move and freight movement of goods. But if we think about the advent of the cars and some of the emerging technology, that same corridor looks very different right now, where the cars are priority. You don't have as much interaction. You have some interaction. So what I'm going to ask right now is everyone could open up their chat box and put in the chat box where you're able to say, well, what is your favorite thing about where you live right now? Is it that you have green space, for example? Is it that you're close to public transit, for example? Think about some of those things. So we have green space, we have quiet roads. People like the peace, apartment, outlooks the dog park. I like to walk my dog as well, public parks. Now, I say that because what we're seeing, some people like being close to the highway, having access to transit. One of the things I say, different recreations, and that's still coming up right now. We like to think of things that give ourselves balance, or for me, I'm just going to speak from my experience, that way to decompress is a part of what adds to our happiness, where we're always not in the same mode. And sometimes with that transportation, we want to make sure that we have that option as well as we're getting around. How are we going to be able to decompress? So some of the things that we're thinking about and thinking in the future, how will road design, land use be changed in the future? Right here, we can see that one of the things that we have coming out the Biden administration, they're telling us that pedestrians should be the priority. It should be people over cars. When we're thinking about that design, is that going to make us more comfortable? I have a coworker, he's more comfortable where he can ride his bike every day to work in this area. He would be if that was the dominant area. Then thinking about some other uses, and I brought up an example of the curbside uses, thinking about parking, the electrification of vehicles. Right now, I live in a suburban area. For an electric vehicle now, I have a charging station in my garage, and it may or may not be at your workplace. Where is it along the way? Do you have that range anxiety? Is that going to add to your stress too, to have an electric vehicle, even though we're in a situation right now that is our combustion engine is a non-renewable resource? So what are we going to do with the shared electric charging stations and those possibilities as well? Thinking about, I talked about earlier when I went to Japan, that was the first time that I saw alternative use for a parking deck, and that was just looking at the different modes. But what if we had the options where our built structures, we were looking at a different use where it wasn't necessarily just one mode or just for the car, but you had the option for relaxation, to rest, different activities, and it wasn't dominated by vehicle. Now I'm going to ask that we pull up the two polling questions that I have. And those two polling questions that we're looking at, how are we getting around now and in the future? So my first polling question that I'm going to ask is, what is your preferred way to get around? And that's looking at now. So looking at whether we're walking, whether we're bicycling, whether we're driving alone, or if you're in a shared ride, public transportation. What is your option? Then the next thing I'm going to ask, really thinking about towards the future, what transportation technologies will most impact your quality of life? Thinking about those emerging technologies, whether we're talking about driverless cars, driverless shuttles, electrification of vehicles, shared charging stations to basically mitigate that range anxiety, or on-demand services. Okay. Questions coming in. So we are going to stop the poll in 2 seconds. So we'll stop 1, 2, and we'll stop now. So when we look at what we're talking about in terms of our preferred way to get around, most people would prefer walking. That may feed into where you live and where you work in terms of you get around. If we're looking at what technology will most impact your quality of life, the electrification of vehicles. Now, that is a technology that's definitely coming, and interested to continue that conversation about, well, what do we think about those shared services, their shared charging stations, and how we may have to impact some other industries to make sure that that's possible. So just thinking about some of the possibilities that we may have in the future when we're thinking about our built environment, our roadway design, our transportation options, and then our various influencers about where we live, work, play, and get around. This is a possibility of what it could look like in the future. Now, most of these images are of the urban context, but we can think about what it would be if you were in a suburban, rural area. Think about how we would use a roadway design where it's not just for the cars parking, but if you had some of those driverless shuttles, you had places where you could mostly do your walking or you could do your bicycling. And this is an image from RPA, just really thinking about how our transportation experience could evolve and our various options could evolve. From about the time we are right now, where you see most people, they may be looking at doing a self-driving car, or they may be looking at a car, they may be looking at riding alone in a car, they may be looking at carpooling. Then in the future, we have an option where we have more electric vehicles. If they are driverless vehicles, do we need to keep them throughout the day? If they're driverless vehicles, are as many people going to live in the center? Would we prefer to live out in those green spaces and enjoy the environment more? That means that that corridor, there's going to be more room for those open spaces. There's going to be more room for those things that enjoy and give us happiness in our transportation options. So what I would ask and think about the question to continue, what is it going to look like when we think about design, these emerging technologies, and what really makes us happy as we're commuting along the way in the future? So thank you very much. Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Zenobia. That was amazing. And as someone who primarily relies on public transportation to get to and from work, and even just to visit people during this time, it's really interesting to notice certain ways how we may not intentionally realize the way that transportation is affecting our daily happiness. But I think this conversation will make us more intentional with our actions moving forward and draw that attention that we need to make us happier. So thank you really for that really insightful and mindful presentation. And now moving on to our last speaker, it's going to be Kim Flores, Director of Happiness at Johnson & Second CEO, author, speaker, expert in social and emotional well-being. As Chief Officer of Strategy and Happiness, Kim Flores works as a catalyst and a partner to grow purpose-driven businesses and their heart-led DEI cultures for maximum impact on a local, national, or global level. In addition to working in the advertising, branding, marketing world of Johnson & Second, a two-time Ad Age Best Places to Work winner, Kim has worked in the Dallas film industry for 25 years. She worked as a commercial director and independent filmmaker and won an ALMA Award, American Latin Media Arts Award, for her feature films in Vocecitas, which she wrote and co-directed. Kim is also a published author. Kim has worked as an intuitive life counselor for 21 years, and she is certified in the science of well-being under the instruction of cognitive scientist Dr. Lori Renee Santos at Yale University, and became certified as a chief happiness officer with DeMarc's happiness expert and global thought leader, Alexander, I'm going to butcher this, Kierulf. Kim practices happiness one moment at a time with her husband, 2 sons, and 2 rescue dogs in Dallas, Texas. So Kim, I'm really looking forward to hearing your presentation.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm truly happy to be here. And before we begin, I'd like to take a poll to see where we all are in this moment. Now, there's no right or wrong answer. There's no report cards or ribbons, just information about you and for you. So if we can pull up that poll. Over the last 12 months, did you notice that you learned something new? Yes or no? Over the last 12 months, did you notice that you had more resilience? Yes or no? Over the last 12 months, did you notice that you had more gratitude? Yes or no? So don't overthink it, just submit what you have and we'll see what we get. Boop. See if we have a little bit more time. It's yes or no, yes or no. All right. Wow. Fantastic. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. 97. I'm going to write this down. 97, 78, and then 85. Fantastic. All right. Well, I'm going to pull all this information and put this in my happiness back pocket as we continue to, and we'll discuss it when I come back on our discussion. Now, speaking of gratitude, I would like to thank the United Nations and Ahmed and Caroline for producing this impactful series and providing us with the opportunity to discuss the topics of happiness and well-being in our communities and cities. Now, my portion of this discussion is called The Mind, Sustainable Design, and the Transportation to Happiness, Happiness, Happiness. Okay, we're going to start with the mind. Now, everybody wants to have happiness and well-being, and especially as we continue to navigate through the next phases of this pandemic. Now, the million-dollar question is, how do we consistently create these positive emotions and experiences? Well, for starters, it happens in our mind, our big, fat brains. Now, let me share a very recent experience. Now, I was speaking about today's events and the resumes of my very distinguished panelists. And the person I was talking to said, let me get this straight. This is a United Nations panel, and you have Dr. Marie-Christine Giese, you have Rob Fleming, and Zenobia Fields. Now, these are these three amazing heart-led trailblazers who have committed their lives to service. Oh, and we're also in a pandemic. Oh, and then wasn't your state like 5 or 6 weeks ago in this huge winter storm and you totally fried your grid and caused blackouts and worse? And it just so happened to be the most expensive natural disaster recorded in Texas's and US history. And with all of that, what are you going to do, Madam Happiness, to bring happiness to the people? And I said, whatever it takes. Now, in my fight or flight response, I wanted to punch that person in the eye, but I'm not a fan of violence. And truth be told, the other person who was acting nasty and snarky was me. And I didn't think it would be good to show up today with a black eye for this presentation on happiness. But in that present moment, I took a big deep breath. I kissed my reptilian brain for fighting for me and trying to protect me. And instead of reacting in that moment, I decided to respond and do something different. And I decided to do whatever it takes. So while I can't guarantee your happiness or well-being in this moment, my intention is to do whatever it takes with information, research, and inspiration that you can apply right here and right now for your own happiness and well-being. In her book, The How of Happiness, positive psychology research Dr. Sonia Lyubomirsky describes happiness as the experience of joy, contentment, and positive well-being, combined with the sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. Now, happiness is a really broad experience and personal experience. That's why you can have one person who's partying with thousands of other people at Burning Man, and then you can have another dude looking for sustainable wood to build his tiny house in his backyard, and then you could have another girl who's surrounded by strangers and serving soup in a soup kitchen during the worst winter storm on record. And the crazy thing, or the amazing thing, or the amazing crazy thing is all these people in that exact moment can experience happiness and well-being in their minds. which takes me to my second point, the sustainable design of happiness. With all those events I mentioned, here is the interesting and challenging part. Our brain tries to make sense of these outside events that are happening to us in order to build the foundation of sustainable happiness. The only problem is that this is not a solid foundation at all. Nay, nay. Our beautiful brains perceive the correlation of happiness and the event as cause and effect. Our brains constantly con us and mislead us that certain external events determine our happiness. So when things happen like the pandemic happened, we believe we can't be happy because of these outside external forces, but this is not accurate. Based on Dr. Lubomirsky's research, what determines our happiness is called the 40% solution. The 40% solution for the people in the back, 40% solution. So if you think of your happiness as a pie, 50% of your happiness is predetermined by your mama and your daddy, or a combo. You can't control that, like your height. Then you still have another 50%. And here is what's interesting about this 10%. That only 10% of the variance in our happiness level is explained by the differences of life circumstances or situations such as, are you rich or you're poor? Are you wealthy or rich or you're poor? Are you sick or you're healthy? Are you beautiful or you're not? Everybody's beautiful. Are you married or you're single? So it's only 10%. So if you take that away, you still have 40%. And that big whopping 40% of potential happiness can be activated by our intentional and consistent activity. That means that 40%, we get to take the wheel and drive down the path to our happiness, which brings us to the transportation of happiness. And all we have to do is focus on a few things. Now, when it comes to these activities, you don't have to try to do them all or do them all at the same time. You just need to do some of them for 21 days. So 2, peace to yourself, 21. And do them until they become natural, like putting gas in your car or air in your tire. Now, you may ask which ones you should use, but remember, you are an expert on you. Trust your gut, trust your intuition, and see which ones work for you. But I'm gonna blow your mind. You have already been doing them based on the poll that we just did. On the poll, we talked about learning new things, resilience, gratitude. One of the activities that Dr. Lubomirsky recommended is developing strategies for coping. And you have already been doing this by learning new things, which is also a growth mindset. Thinking about navigating and wearing your mask all the time, or also thinking about rationing toilet paper. You know what I mean? And when it comes to resilience, well, I want to say that here's how I know that you're resilient. Each one of you are still here today. And you have managed to stay alive during the last 12 months of a raging and ongoing pandemic. And that resilience is something to be truly grateful for. So take a big deep of gratitude for that. And those are just a few things that you can do that can activate that 40% of potential happiness. Other things you can do are practicing acts of kindness, nurturing social relationships, learning to forgive, including yourself, increasing flow experience. Those are the things that you do and time gets lost, savoring life's joys, committing to your goals, practicing spirituality, meditation, physical exercise, cultivating optimism, and acting like a happy person. And when I mention things about acting like a happy person, there's normally a couple of people that are like, I'm not a happy person, I'm a deep person, I'm an intellectual person. And then somebody will show them a box of kittens, or someone will show them a cat dressed up like a taco. And it's like, oh my God, it's a taco cat. And taco cat backwards is taco cat. And then they're in joy and bliss and they're happy. So be like that person, do more of that. And as human beings and social creatures, we need connection. This is how we thrive. And when we couldn't see each other and travel during the pandemic, we suffered and felt pain because we're all interconnected. But here's how we can share happiness and well-being outside ourselves. If we can start with our minds and understand that happiness is not outside of us, and practice a few things for at least 21 days to activate that potential happiness, we can travel down the road to happiness and then share that map of wisdom to those around us and those who we love. Our minds, body, and souls are the microcosms of our communities and cities we live in. And when we have stress and unrest within us, this energy continues to flow in our environment. But the opposite is also true. When we experience happiness and well-being in our bodies, this energy travels into our communities and cities. The road to happiness and well-being may begin with our brain and travel to our gut to do the next right move. But it is always in the heart where happiness and well-being reaches its final destination. Thank you, and I'm grateful for all of you.
Thank you, Kim, so much. I mean, I know I'm going to be leaving the event here today feeling so happy and so grateful, really, for everyone who joined us, for all of our esteemed panelists, for UNA USA for allowing us to host this amazing presentation. We are unfortunately running short on time, but I will do a quick plug for those of you who do have follow-up questions. Please join unausa.org. We have an amazing Slack channel where all the Global Goals ambassadors, myself and Ahmed included, are able to put you in touch with our esteemed panelists or answer any further questions that you may have. I see Anna is definitely putting a plug for any civic engagement that you would be willing to do by texting your members of Congress to uphold our country's commitment to achieving the SDGs and by extension, of course, mental health and happiness. So with that, I would just like to give a short closing remark. Today, Marie-Christine showed us how, despite the misconception that money can buy happiness, after a certain point, happiness plateaus, something known as the Easterling paradox. She also told us 3 principles that we can practice daily to practice contentment and achieve happiness. 1, train attention away from comparisons that hurt you in the long run. 2, train your attention towards gratitude. And 3, practice mindfulness. Robert demonstrated simple ways we can change our behavior by changing our environment, incorporating a biophilic design into our lifestyle, especially in a time when we are indoors, and how attention to these details and acting with intention can help us feel happier in our everyday lives. Zenobia showed us how we can be more mindful in our daily transportation methods, and she lent an insight as to incorporating happiness into future public transportation design. Again, shameless plug for UNA USA, we can become more civically engaged to continue keeping happiness at the forefront of those transportation changes. Finally, our passionate Kim Flores reminded us that response and doing action for what is right will help us achieve happiness and positive well-being. Once life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile, we find our self-actualized selves and happiness and well-being. To achieve the transportation of happiness for 21 days, stay consistent and intentional with 2 things, and you will find a bit more gratitude and mindfulness in that way. In order to build sustainable happiness into our cities and communities, and in these uncertain and challenging times especially, we must control the degrees of freedom we have and be cognizant of those things in our control to bring about not just happiness, but inspiration. Practice gratitude, choose to walk or bicycle in good weather, add some green or scenes of greenery to your vision board. And I hope everyone here leaves feeling a bit more inspired and a bit happier today. So thank you, everyone.